One of my goals this year is to improve the relationships in my life, with myself, with God, with Scott, my partner, and with each of my kids. So, when I found the Intentional Living with Tanya Hale podcast, I knew it was going to be helpful for me as I'm working on strengthening my relationships. And I wanted to share it with any of you who feel the pull to improve your relationships in your life. I'm Andy Smiley, the Friendly Podcast Guide. I'm a mom who uses podcasts to fight the boredom and loneliness of motherhood and to entertain my kids when I need a break. And I want you to be able to use podcasts in these ways too. But it can be overwhelming to try and find a podcast you or your kids will enjoy in the thousands of shows that are out there. That's where I come in. Each week, I talk about different podcasts with topics ranging from parenting to pop culture and everything in between. My episodes are short and they answer your questions about the show, so you'll know if it's a good fit for you or your kids or not. Now, let's talk podcasts. Tanya describes the show like this. I help to empower other LDS women by teaching them the concepts and tools they need to transform their own lives into something they love. Whether you are wanting to strengthen an existing relationship with a spouse or your adult children, or whether you're working through the challenges of divorce and figuring out how to heal and move forward, I've got you. The length of each episode is around 30 minutes. Before we learn more about the vibe of the Intentional Living podcast, we're going to take a quick break to talk about my Friendly Podcast Guide birthday giveaway. I wanted to say thank you for listening to the podcast as we celebrate the second birthday of FPG this month. It has been so much fun connecting with so many of you and introducing you to all the cool podcasts and the people who make them. As a thank you for another great year, I wanted to give one of my listeners a package full of my favorite things. I asked on my Instagram stories what y'all wanted for the giveaway, and the people have spoken. The favorite things package was definitely the winner. All you have to do to get your name in the drawing for the giveaway is to fill out a quick demographic survey. And I'll choose one of you to win the Favorite Things package at the end of the month. Thank you so much for filling out this survey. It'll help me make sure to find podcasts that you will enjoy and find sponsors that align with your wants, needs, and desires. Thank you so much for another great year, and I can't wait to give away my Favorite Things package. Now we get to hear from Tanya as she talks about how some hardships in her personal life led her to becoming a coach and starting her podcast. Tanya, welcome to the Friendly Podcast Guide. Thank you so much for being here today. Before we dive into your podcast, can you introduce yourself a little bit to my audience?
Yes, my name is Tanya Hale. I am a life coach, and I focus mostly on coaching middle-aged women on relationships. Relationships are just fascinating to me. I was married for 24 years and then got divorced. And then I was single for 6.5 years and got remarried a year and a half ago. And so seeing the whole gamut of how relationships work, how they can be so dysfunctional and so difficult, and now applying the tools that I teach on my podcast into my new marriage is a phenomenal experience. And it's just unbelievable to me. So when I got married, I moved from Utah to Indiana. Because I can do my coaching from anywhere. So that's nice. And I have 4 adult kids, which I love. And I also do coaching on adult kid relationships because those are challenging for so many parents. And so, let's see, that's about the bulk of the basics.
Totally. That is so awesome that you're using all of your life experience plus everything that you've learned, I'm sure, and researched and studied. And like you're using that for the good of other people. That is so wonderful. And I'm so grateful. And I'm sure that all of your listeners and your clients are also grateful.
I love doing it so much. It really has changed my life in a significant way.
Definitely. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but for all of my listeners who don't get to have the one-on-one conversation with you, let's talk about why you started your podcast and like how that worked into being a life coach.
All right. So I, after my divorce, I went through, it seems like almost the obligatory 6 months of just blaming. Like it was all his fault and I couldn't see anything else. And then after that time, I was introduced to Brené Brown and I started listening to a presentation of hers called The Power of Vulnerability. And I was blown away. I was driving my kids around in the car, in my van, like listening to this, and just floored with what I was learning about vulnerability and how that fit into relationships. And I was like, I didn't even know vulnerability was a part of relationships, which tells you partially why my marriage was such a difficult place.
Mm.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is huge. And then after Brene Brown, I started expanding a little bit, and I found a place called the Life Coach School, and it blew my mind with what I learned there. And I just started eating it up, and I started listening to podcasts. And within 6 weeks, I was like, okay, this is my thing. This is the way that I need to share with people and put my message out into the world. And, got certified, started a podcast 4.5 years ago. And then as I've moved in the last year and a half into a new marriage, I am just floored with what the application of these tools that I have gained, the difference that it makes in my marriage. This is a partnership in every sense of the word. And it is a deep, intimate place that I never even came close to in my previous marriage. And this is kind of what I always felt like there was a possibility for, but just was completely stymied at how to get there. And so that's kind of the story of my podcast and how I put it out there in the world. So
awesome. So you talked about listening to other people's podcasts and all of Brene Brown's stuff, which is absolutely amazing. I love taking in all of her, just anything she puts out. I'm like, yep, I need that in my life. So I completely resonate with that. So we talked about what you got from other people's podcasts, but what do you want people to get from your podcast?
I think that the thing that I love putting my podcast out there the most for is helping people find answers, helping them know how to show up in a way that feels genuine and authentic to them, that they can feel empowered in how they're showing up in their relationships and what they're creating. And that empowerment helps them to find the answers that they need for whatever the direction they're going to go.
Nice. Yes. Okay. So I feel like I have a pretty good idea of the vibe of your show, just like helpful and like real. But how would you describe the vibe of your show?
I think that a lot of the feedback that I get from people is they just feel I'm very relatable, because I do share a lot of personal stuff, and it's all cleared through my husband and whoever else, right? And one of my goals when I started it was never to bash on my ex-husband. Like, I never wanted to say anything that put him in a horrible light. And so I've been really, really careful not to do that. But I feel like I share a lot of my own struggles with a lot of these things and my own insights. And it really is, I go back and look at my podcast from the beginning on, it really is a picture of my own growth and how I have figured things out and grown into where I am now. And I love that. I think as well, I create a really, really safe place for people to be humans. Because you know what? Gosh darn it, we are all a hot mess. Every single mess. And that's okay. We are supposed to be a hot mess. We are humans figuring it out. We're not supposed to have all the answers. And when we can create a really compassionate, loving space for ourselves to make mistakes and to need to circle back around and forgive and apologize, and rather than beating ourselves up and getting on our own case, I think that's one of the most harmful things that we can do if we want to grow and create something different, is to be hard on ourselves and to talk mean to ourselves. I think I work really hard to create a really safe space for the people that listen to my podcast that says, listen, of course you're going to think that. Of course you're going to feel that. You're human. That's part of what we do. But that doesn't mean we have to stay in this place. We can also make some adjustments. We can also look at things a different way. We can also see things differently so that we can create more what we want to create, but no beating ourselves up ever. That's one of the first rules when I work with my one-on-one clients on the first meeting is, listen, we never beat ourselves up here. We always create a really safe space of compassion that says, oh, I didn't know that one before, but now that I do, I can make some adjustments. So.
Yes. Ooh. And that one, I feel like that thought process, that brain, like to be in that space is hard, and it's hard to stay in, right? So that's why we need coaches. That's why we need to listen to great podcasts, is to help us remember, oh, wait, This isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be kind to myself and understanding about where I am and where I was. And yeah. And just, we need those reminders a lot.
Yeah. And a lot of us have never been able to go into that place. For whatever reason, we have just been hard on ourselves our whole lives. And this perfectionist idea that really perfectionism really isn't even a thing, right? We've just created this weird thing that doesn't even exist. And so learning to be compassionate to ourselves in our heads as well as out loud is a huge skill. And it's such an important piece of this puzzle.
Definitely. Well, and it helps us to be like, when we're kind to ourselves, it's easier to be kind to other people, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I feel like that's the goal in relationships, is to see other people in the best light, so that hopefully we can see ourselves in the best light, so we can see other people in their best light, right? So when I got to listen to a couple of your episodes and I absolutely loved them, but I want to hear what your favorite episode is. But to give you a second to think about it, because I know it's hard, you have so many episodes. First, will you tell me, where can people find you?
So my podcast is called Intentional Living with Tanya Hale. So I've got that. I also have a website, tanyahale.com. I sometimes do group coaching classes, which are kind of fun. Don't have a super strict schedule with those, but they kind of come and go. And those, I love doing those. They're super fun. I do send out an email every Friday. It's meant to be read in a minute or so, just to kind of give you like a quick little, oh, I can see this. And that can be signed up for as well on my tanyahale.com website. And then I'm on the social media sites. I'm on IG and Facebook under Tanya Hale LDS Life Coaching. I can be found there. So
I will make sure to link all of that in the show notes so that people can go directly wherever they want to go to find you. And okay, so now, what is your favorite episode, or a couple of episodes? Because I know it's hard to choose just one.
Yes. Some of my favorite podcast episodes. The first one is number 92, and that one is called Clean Love. And the reason I love this one so much is because this was a concept that came to me, and I didn't make it up. It's just one that finally clicked with me in such a way that I called it Clean Love, because that's what it seemed to be to me. It's an idea that beyond unconditional love, for me, unconditional love was I love you no matter what you do. Like, you can show up however you want and I'm going to love you. Clean love was more on the other side of this, that says, listen, I'm going to choose to show up with love because that's the person that I want. And I'm going to take away any expectation that you show up anyway because of my loving you. So that one is my favorite one, because so much of the work that I've done since I had that epiphany in my life is based off of the idea of clean love. I also have some that I've done lately, especially that I love. I have one called number 204 called Being a Peacemaker. And I love that one because I think as women, we oftentimes step into this place of being a peacekeeper and we just keep the peace at any cost. And it destroys us and it destroys our relationships because we don't show up honestly. We just are like, listen, it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. And we don't show up to make peace. We show up to keep peace. And there's a big difference there. A peacemaker will have those hard conversations honestly, but also kindly. So I love that one. I did do one just recently, number 269, called Fine, the 4-letter F word, that plays off of that idea that, no, listen, I'm fine. Most of the times when we say that in our relationships, we're actually lying and we're gaslighting. And we don't always see it as that. We just think, nope, I'm just keeping the peace, right? But no, when we say fine, we're lying and we're gaslighting. Let's start having some honesty in our relationships. That is the only way that we are going to create the intimate partnerships that we really, really want. And if we're lying about even little small things, it's going to kill us. So, I could probably come up with about 60 that are my favorites. I get that. So many that have so many ideas that have completely changed the trajectory of my life and have put me in this relationship that I'm now in that is just mind-boggling to me of what we're creating here and how loving and safe and supportive and intimate that we can be with each other. So
totally. That is absolutely lovely. And I will make sure to link all of those in the show notes too, because I know that my listeners and me will want to go listen to those.
Yeah.
So because most of my listeners are moms or parents, I like to ask, is your podcast okay for little ears, or is this one that we should put headphones in or wait for kids to be not in the room?
Totally okay to have anybody listen. It's just always clean and nice, and I'm just a nice person, right? Like, so I'm sure there are people in my life who would say, maybe we want to question that thought. That's a thought, not a fact.
Oh, that's fabulous. Okay. Perfect. I feel like there's room for, at least in my life, there's room for both kinds of podcasts, but I always like to ask so that, like if you can have it on in carpool, or if this is one for like after the kids are in bed. So that's why I like to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to add that we haven't touched on yet?
If you're interested in specific topics, I do have on my website a tab at the top where you can download topics. So I have topics of divorce, parenting adult kids, marriage relationships, dating after divorce, working on yourself, the thought model, which is something that I use as well in my coaching, which would be more self-coaching kind of stuff. I do have those topics that you can click on those, and it will give you a list of podcasts that talk just about those specific topics. So that's a really great resource, because I have almost 300 podcasts out at this point, and nobody's going to go back and listen to all 300. It would be amazing if they did, because I think they would learn some great stuff, but we just don't have time for that in our lives. So if you want a list of 15 or 20 topics that you can go back, subjects, and go back and listen to them, or episodes, you can go back and listen to 15 or 20 episodes about one specific topic, then I've got that available on my podcast as well.
Awesome. And that is always such a good tool, because podcasts are such a great way to learn things. But sometimes, like you said, like people can get a little overwhelmed when there's a lot of episodes. So when you can like narrow it down for people so they can know at least where to start, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I'm so excited to introduce you to my listeners.
Oh, thank you for having me. I hope that some of them start listening and find some tools that are really going to help them step into next level relationship.
Totally. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm just so glad that I found your podcast and I get to share it with my listeners.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Andy.
Tanya has so many good things to say, and I am so grateful for all of the work she has put in to help all of us. If you know someone who could use the Intentional Living podcast in their life, will you share this episode with them? Also, if you want a shot at winning a package full of my favorite things, fill out the demographic survey in the show notes. Talk to you soon.